Academy Award-winning actor Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones are reportedly furious with CNN because of the debate that their son had with conservative commentator Scott Jennings on the network during the government shutdown.
The couple's son, Dylan Douglas, has become a left-wing activist in recent years with his own political talk show on Sirius XM. Here's part of the argument that he had with Scott Jennings last month when he appeared on Abby Phillips' show.
You cannot put on the American people that Democrats were the one that were hurting people, making this plight.
Who was casting the votes against opening the government, Democrats or Republicans?
Who was
casting the votes?
Scott, who was wanting to cut SNAP benefits?
Nobody.
Republicans
voted to
playing up SNAP benefits after 2 courts ruled that it was unallowed.
Republicans voted to fund SNAP 15 times.
That clip went viral at the time, with many conservatives applauding Jennings, saying he dismantled Douglas's liberal talking points. But now the clip resurfaced online amid reports that Douglas's parents are blacklisting perhaps CNN because of the segment. Celebrity and entertainment journalist Rob Shooter, writing on his Substack, Catherine is absolutely livid. She's telling friends the whole segment was unfair and exploitative. He told people CNN crossed a line. They genuinely believe the producer set Dylan up, invited him on, for a soft conversation, and then fed him to a veteran political pit bull.
Now, Jennings himself responded to that report. Here he was talking on Meghan McCain's podcast.
I was as surprised as you are to see that his parents were upset about it. But, I think what happens generally with some of these folks is they exist in a very tight little bubble. They never really talk to Republicans or conservatives. They don't really get outside of their, bubble where everyone's telling them how smart and good looking they are. And then they wind up on television with someone of a different persuasion. And it is surprising to them. And so I hope Dylan comes back. I'm sure he'll get better at it.
Jennings also, on that same podcast, downplayed reports that he's considering leaving CNN for CBS.
Rumors had been swirling that the station's new editor-in-chief, Bari Weiss, was looking to bring Jennings on board. But Jennings said that although he's an admirer of Weiss, he recently signed a contract extension with CNN and is perfectly happy where he is. Discussing that with Meghan McCain, my friend, on her show on the Two-Way platform. I do a show on the Two-Way platform, too. It's a good platform. You get to interact with people live.
Oh, really?
Kind of call in and ask questions. It's fun. Anyway, neither here nor there. I thought this story was funny that Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas, both actors I like tremendously. I like them in so many things. Loved Catherine Zeta-Jones since I was a kid. I loved her in The Mask of Zorro. Did you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Great movie. She's great in Wednesday. She's Morticia Addams.
Yes.
The Morticia Addams from the Addams Family movies of the 90s will always be my favorite one.
Yeah.
But Catherine Zeta-Jones does a good job. So nothing against them personally at all. But they're sad for their
baby boy.
Their little baby boy who was so mad at Scott Jennings was so unfair to him. Boo-hoo. I think it's hilarious.
My biggest issue is I have two things. So one, your son, unfortunately, I know this is hard to digest because I have an older brother who I think my parents very much baby because he's younger than me, but grown man.
Yeah.
And so whenever he makes a grown man decision, that's a grown man. And my parents cannot say, we need to, no, grown man. Your son decided to go on a show, grown man, can't have an argument. And now, for them to both be so upset about how the segment was handled, saying he got taken advantage of, have they never seen Abby Phillips' show a day in their life? Like literally every single day, Scott Jennings goes on there and has a battle that he either wins or loses. But either way, it's always a contentious debate, whether it's Anna Navarro or Kevin O'Leary. Like there's people always screaming, and Abby has to kind of be like, okay, one at a time. Like this is the type of. So that was a very mild demonstration of what that panel could be, and to be deeply offended. I know these are just reports. These are all alleged that they're so deeply offended. But either one, they don't watch CNN anyway, so blacklisting the network wouldn't be relevant because they certainly haven't seen it before if they're blacklisted over that small segment. Yeah. And then two, your son, if he's going to play in the political arena, and this is speaking from somebody who literally will debate politics. You win some, you lose some. But you know what happens? You know what happens next? I'm not going to go back and tuck tail. If I want to stay in this game, why don't you read a little bit more? Why don't you go back to tell and come back with the information or admit that your perspective has shifted because somebody who's a great debater has brought an idea to your mind that makes you say, oh, you know what, that's actually changed my perspective. Because my job and his job should not be, unless he's paid and lined pockets by the Democratic Party, should not be to defend endlessly. Just like I hope your job would not be to defend any party endlessly. If somebody's wrong and they're wrong, if they're right, they're right. If there's a good point to be made, listen to it or make it. And I just think that he can't really be in this space if he's going to feel, or his parents are going to be trying to go to bat for him every time.
You win some, you lose some. It's as Scott says, you get better at it over time. I mean, I've done, probably you have as well. I mean, just from Rising, I've done, I don't know, hundreds of hours of political debate from the 5 years almost I've hosted this show, and appearances on Fox and CNN and other Nexstar properties, everything else. You have good days and bad. You have, I mean, some every now and then I'll watch some old video surfaces and I go, oh, did not do a good job there. Or I'll go, oh, I did do a good job. I remember that one. I should bring that up again.
Don't you also, like, for me, I respect people that are like, oh man, okay, you came ready to talk. You know, I respect that every time that happens. Like, if there's something on, like, even with the COVID conversation, I never was super pro-vax and pro-mask and all that stuff, but you were so riled up about it that me and you go back and forth, because I'm just like, I think
there's things we care about more and things we care about less. Right. I care a lot. I'm a COVID extremist. I care a lot about that. You saw earlier we discussed the social media stuff. I'm really passionate about tech issues, COVID. Those are the main things. Free speech issues, foreign policy. Is not my area of expertise, so I'm more inclined to listen to a range of perspectives on that because it's just not my.
But even when my point is that even when you're like deeply rooted in whatever your thought is, to have a good solid debate with somebody where they're not just like blowing smoke is always to me a beautiful thing to watch on TV and to happen in real life.
Yeah.
Like when people do that. So I think that he should take the moment and take what Scott Jennings was trying to argue and say, wait, is this true? Are the numbers, and go home and actually do some research about it and see how he feels.
I think Scott said he'd be happy to talk it over with Catherine Zeta-Jones over drinks.
Anybody would. Who wouldn't?
I appreciate that comment.
Republican New York Representative Elise Stefanik was feuding with Mike Johnson earlier this week, but now it appears the two have made up. It has to do with the annual defense spending bill lawmakers are trying to pass by the end of this month.
Some Republicans, including Stefanik, were looking to add a provision to the bill that would require the FBI to notify Congress when conducting counterintelligence investigations into federal candidates seeking office. But on Monday, Stefanik took to X, accusing Johnson of siding with Democrats to block that provision. She wrote in part, unless this provision is added back into the bill to prevent illegal political weaponization of the intelligence community in our elections, I am a hard no. I have always voted in support of the defense and intelligence authorization bills, but no more. It is a scandalous disgrace that Republicans are allowing themselves to be rolled by the Dems and the deep state on this.
Now this all goes back to the FBI's Crossfire hurricane probe into alleged ties between Trump's 2026 campaign and Russia. Stefanik has been pushing for this provision for years and doubled down on it after the Arctic Frost investigation that looked into the efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
But when reporters brought up the issue to Mike Johnson, he denied any involvement in removing the provision and said he actually supports it. Take a look.
So that provision was dropped out of the NDAA. It doesn't mean it can't become law or even that is a final decision. But I sent my friend Elise a text last night and I said, can you find out what the issue was and I'll help you resolve it. I support her provision. I mean, I would vote for it. I think it's smart. And I'm not sure exactly why it wasn't included. So I don't know why she's frustrated with me. I literally had nothing to do with it, but I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and help her.
Unfortunately for Johnson, Stefanik was not buying any of his explanation. She continued her social media tirade on Tuesday, calling him a liar. But then Wednesday morning, the Congresswoman sent out an update. Great news! After a productive discussion I had last night with President Trump and Speaker Johnson, the provision requiring congressional disclosure when the FBI opens counterintelligence investigations into presidential and federal candidates seeking office will be included in the NDAA bill on the floor. This is a significant legislative win delivered against the illegal weaponization of the deep state. And of course, while this is an important step, there is so much more work to do.
I don't know that I do support this provision. Here's my problem.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Well, but here's my problem. I don't like when Congress, political people who otherwise support domestic surveillance and law enforcement's surveilling of Americans and the Patriot Act and the spying on Americans and the collecting of our data, vote for some special carve-out for politicians. Like, that's my problem with this whole Arctic frost thing. They're furious that their records were obtained but looked at by law enforcement, and I share their outrage. But I am outraged on behalf of all of the American people. I'm not so outraged on behalf of Republicans who voted for this very power to be invested in law enforcement. So now they're going to say that if you get to have a heads up from law enforcement if you're being investigated if you're a congressional candidate, but not if you're an ordinary American. I don't know about that. I'd have to think about it further. I'd have to read the greater details, but I don't want special accommodations for the politicians. Let them abide by, if they created the deep state, if they're annoyed by it, dismantle it. But they're only outraged when it happens to one of them or it happens to Trump. And I've criticized Republicans for that for a long time. They're furious when their text messages get read by the FBI. But what about the rest of us? They voted to give the FBI that power over and over again. They reauthorize it every time without thinking, without batting an eyelash. Now they're mad? I don't know about that. It's weak to me.
Well, I think it's interesting. The interesting part of this whole thing to me is the way that this feels like there was an intention to take it out of this proposal, and so the fact that it's
Mike
now
Johnson's
back in
such a smooth guy. He's like, we took it out. What are you talking about?
Exactly. That's
what
it felt very much
why
like.
is she even mad?
Yes. So I
It's
appreciate
such a gaslighting sort of way
yes.
of talking to the frustrated female members of his
So that
coalition.
it's interesting to me the way that the president and Johnson handled this in Stefanik is totally different, and maybe her approach is a little bit different because she didn't go as many times at any leadership. But then Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? She kind of went, like, I guess, hit. There's a little friction within the GOP
What are you
right now.
talking about? You sound crazy. You should smile more.
Me?
No.
No.
That's what he's
I was
saying
like, wait.
to the Stefaniks and MTGs.
Exactly. So it's kind of like pushing them away. But I
like,
think that for her to go on X this morning and say this has been an update, it makes me wonder why they wanted to cater to her so much. So then I looked into it, and I know that she obviously announced her gubernatorial bid last month, and so she's looking forward to moving forward in that election in New York and gaining steam on Governor Hochul, and that's a goal for her. But I know that she's like a popular player within the Republican Party right now who maybe wants to differentiate herself and say that I am outside of the bureaucracy, even though she's in Congress, like you said, and we have to look at her record and see how many times that she has approved and voted for things that will surveil everyone else. But when it happens to anyone that she's an ally with, it's a problem. But I think the fact that she is trying to, in the same way that I felt Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to differentiate herself in certain ways because of bigger political aspirations, that's the bigger end game to me for her here, is to say, I was the one that stood up. She can roll on her record when people start to bring this up in New York, especially because New York is a place where people probably feel extremely over-surveilled because there's so many people and so many instances of like NYPD using or acquiring information about people because it's such a populated city. So I think that she's trying to use this for future gains with her interest. And I think that why they responded so quickly might be because they know that if she is the governor of New York, they're going to need that ally for most things.
Well, and remember, she was picked to be, I think, ambassador by Trump to the UN. Is that correct? Can Control Room remind me of what that was? And then they had to withdraw that because they couldn't afford to give up that House seat because it's too close and they don't know. So I think she might feel a bit like she took a major sacrifice and has not gotten enough of a reward, of an attention, of a high-profile slot, and she's fed up with GOP leadership for not recognizing her.
But it also is interesting because she's in this in-between where, yes, President Trump is the leader of the party. Johnson is in a leadership position also. But those tides may start to turn even as she pursues, we look into the midterms and next year's elections, the tides may turn because people know they can't vote for Trump again. We have this conversation often. So what does it mean for her to be allied? Mike Johnson, again. He might not be in the same position. And so there's so much that is connected to her trying to, I guess, flex her muscles a little bit in this moment. That means like, no, propel me up right now before it's too late. And then you won't have an ally when you're about to lose your position or when people can't vote on your name. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of that happening within the GOP right now, which, listen, I'm not saying that just to only criticize one party. The Democrats have their own stuff going on. But within the GOP, there's a lot of fighting and friction. And to do this publicly once again, it shows that there's a little more disarray than I think people want to actually admit. And the fact that they responded so quickly makes me wonder what power they think she's going to have within the next few years.
I guess we'll see. A scandal of alleged widespread fraud throughout the state of Minnesota has politicians and residents of the state on edge. This comes after prosecutors have charged dozens of people with stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from state-run programs.
An article in the New York Times details some of the cases, as well as how the scandal is affecting the reputation of Minnesota's large Somali population. It reads, over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say fraud took root in pockets of Minnesota's Somali diaspora as scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that build state agencies for millions of dollars worth of social services that were never provided. Debate over the fraud has opened new rifts between the state's Somali community and other Minnesotans, and has left some Somali Americans saying they are unfairly facing a new layer of suspicion against them, rather than the small group accused of fraud.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is facing heat for the scandal, too. An X account led by employees of the Minnesota Department of Human Services is alleging that Tim Walz knew about the fraud and did nothing to stop it. The account says, in part, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for this massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud. But no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. As staff, we firsthand witnessed and observed fraud happening, yet we were shut down, reassigned, and told to keep quiet. Sometimes more. Leadership did not want to appear to discriminate against certain communities and were unwilling to take action, such as stopping fraud that would have an adverse impact on their image.
Now, Governor Walz responded partially to the allegations last night on X, writing, quote, just to be clear, there will be no pardons for fraudsters in Minnesota. That was in reference to President Trump recently commuting the prison sentence for David Gentile, the former CEO who had been sentenced for allegedly defrauding thousands of his investors. There's always an example of President Trump doing something that his team is calling for other people not to do. But that's neither here nor there. I think the political fallout from this is appropriate. I think that people are riled up about it. You were bringing this up last week, and I thought that he was attacking Somali Americans specifically because he had an issue with Omar. And I was like, I don't really understand this. But the New York Times, this article, I read deeply into it. But I think blaming Tim Walz in this moment is, again, not the right strategy, because he specifically has laid out what he's done and said during that time of the pandemic, just like most people, President Trump himself, who had Operation Warp Speed, he was worried about speed and providing information and money to people so that they can get off the ground. And he was less worried about attacking fraud at the time, just like most, if you're honest, government agencies weren't. That's why a lot of people during COVID had many instances of taking advantage of the system, and beyond that, till years after when they got back on their feet. But since then, since COVID, Walz says he's created anti-fraud task forces. He's increased data sharing on all information when people do apply for some of these things that people are applying for to get this money. In Minnesota's case, he ordered audits of all these organizations, and he shut down the fraud-ridden housing program that was being accosted.
I'm glad
and
he's finally getting on.
Okay, but if he's responding to it, he's responding to it. But I think when we talk about Somali Americans, now they're in a community and they're being stereotyped as it's the same thing as the Afghan citizens that are like, okay, because a small amount are doing one thing bad, now everybody's bad. That's not true. And so when you're collectively blamed,
no, in the Afghan example, it was one person. This is not one person.
This was 86 people, and all but 8 of them are Somali American. Yes, so we're talking about 80. We're talking about a large Somali community, thousands of people, and we're talking about 86. And so even though they should be looked at,
statistically significant chunk.
Yes, but most Somali Americans, a large, even larger significant chunk, thousands more, contribute to Minnesota's society, to Minnesota's economy. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Now that those things have been addressed, I think those are big issues that come with pointing out Somali Americans in this situation, is that the fraud was massive. So now we need to look into this. Some people have taken as much as $14 million in major schemes for just one entity, saying they're giving out social services that never were rendered. And so, yes, all these people should go. I think most Americans agree that if you are a migrant here, breaking the law, and not breaking the law of coming, but breaking the law of actually breaking our laws that are set in stone in the
stealing welfare resources,
then you should go.
You gotta go.
And you're not going to get any argument from me in that case. And also, Tim Walz, even though he's making a joke about pardoning them, even though he's mocking President Trump and his pardons, he's saying, for real though, like, these people committed crimes, they should go.
They got to go. And we got to vet people who come from this region more aggressively because of this. if it's we don't want to import a nation of con artists and scammers and fraudsters to our country. We just don't. People in America don't want this. And so while yes, I certainly feel bad for innocent Somali Americans who are doing nothing wrong and just want to make a living here, and that's true of immigrants from all sorts of communities. And when you're here, you're here. But sorry, we gotta seriously crack down on this level of fraud.
Is it that Somalis are coming here with bad intentions? I mean, you know how many Americans took advantage of the system during COVID and got in trouble for it? I mean,
well, I hope they all get prosecuted.
Yes, and they should all get prosecuted, but that doesn't mean there's an overwhelming amount of
serious crime. You're stealing from American people.
Agreed,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean there's an overwhelming amount of Somali people doing it. It means that people are behaving poorly during the pandemic, and all should be brought to justice.
Notable
in Minnesota, but the Somali population is statistically providing benefit to that society, to that area of the world, to that area of the country. They are working hard, thousands more. We're talking about whatever that number is, 86 minus 10, so
but not
76
all
people
immigrant
did
communities
something.
are exactly the same in the contributions they're making to America. We can't be that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're that they're exactly the same. I'm saying that
a large
they're working,
amount of welfare, and it is fraud, and it is disturbing.
Yes, I agree. The numbers were out of control, but that doesn't mean we need to look to the entire Somali community in that country that's trying to migrate here and contribute to society and say, you guys have worse intentions than any other community coming over here. There's several people that come over here and do bad things. If you want me to come up with a list tomorrow, I will research it from every different country that maybe doesn't look like Somalians. And so I want to make sure that we're not targeting.
We can stereotype if it's not Somalians?
No, I'm saying maybe we should look at the fraud happening across the board and say, is it a certain community or is it the systems that we need to make sure people like Tim Walz are doing these things and staying on top of it?
If it's disproportionately Somalian, then that's going to impact our immigration policy a little bit. Again, it's not, if it was disproportionately Cuban immigrants or something, we would look at that. If it was disproportionately whatever it was, if it was disproportionately Swedish immigrants, we would look at that. I mean, I am more open to immigration than a lot of people on the right, but we don't, because I think that immigrants at every skill level can help, and we need people to build things, and we need smart people. We're a nation of immigrants. I believe in all that, but I don't want to import a bunch of criminal, even if it's not violent. This isn't violent crime. There's a different form of crime. We can't bring them in.
But it's just in relevance, making sure that people understand it's a tiny fraction of the Somali Americans that are living in Minnesota. Like we're talking about like 77 people out of thousands. And so please don't look at the entire Somali community in one way because of what 77 people did. That could be in cahoots. And they did take a lot of money. They should be prosecuted. They should be deported. We all can agree with that. But that doesn't mean every Somali American is the worst of us. Because Americans surely took advantage of the COVID system also, and they should be prosecuted as well.
It was a bad idea in the first place. We never should have done it. Never should have done any of that.
You want to go back and relive COVID history so bad.
You brought it up.
I'm just saying, that's why Tim Walz said he didn't respond to this immediately. That's just why he's saying he, like all other leadership, was overwhelmed with what to do in the immediate time.
To be her VP. What a terrible choice that was.
Why are you so concerned with it? It doesn't even matter.
It
doesn't matter who he picked. You weren't voting for them, right?
Well, I certainly wasn't going to vote for Tim Walz. I found him more objectionable than I found her. He was much further to the left, harder and uncompromising.
He didn't
leftist.
remind you of that local high school coach that you had back in the day?
God, no. No, I found him just
everyday
utterly
type of guy.
No, that was so fake and fabricated.
I felt that he was everyday.
I found him to be a belligerent, angry old man of hard left politics, of inflating his military record.
You find Tim Walz to be a belligerent, angry old man, but not President Trump? I just want to get this on record. President Trump is not a belligerent, angry old man.
I find Tim Walz less friendly than Donald Trump.
Wow, that's different. Okay, we might as well just
Tim Walz, unlike Donald Trump, set up a snitch hotline for you to report people during COVID who were not following lockdown orders or mask mandates and all that.
Yeah, I would have reported you.
A snitch order.
I would have reported you if you were walking around with no mask on. I'm sorry, Robbie. I wanted to be protected.
We would have come to blows because I did not appreciate that at all in this city. It was in freaking 1984 up here being set up. But we have I will even miss, even though these orders were done by Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C. She recently announced that she's retiring.
Yes, she's going to go have brunch.
I'm going to say on the record, something that surprises you, I am devastated that she is leaving. I am going to miss her. Because now that Chicago has elected a socialist and New York City has elected a socialist, I fully expect that the next mayor of D.C. will be some kind of socialist or socialist light, and I will, even though I was so opposed to much of what Muriel Bowser did, dear Lord, I will miss her compared to whatever is coming next.
Muriel Bowser, we have something in common.
Yeah.
We will both miss you in D.C.
I will miss you, Muriel. Producer of The Charlie Kirk Show, Blake Neff, broke his silence and blasted Candace Owens, rejecting her claims surrounding Kirk's death. Neff wrote on X, "For the past 3 months, we've received a flood of questions about Candace Owens and her claims attacking Charlie's closest friends. For 3 months, we preferred to remain silent, but the attacks have not stopped."
In the latest episode of The Charlie Kirk Show, Neff delivered this response. Let's take a listen.
Candace has mentioned several times that the ball is in our court. So here's what is going to happen. In the near future, there will be a live stream here in Phoenix where we address in a clear and comprehensive way the claims and accusations, the false accusations that have been made against Charlie's family, friends, and the people here at Turning Point. We plan to walk through everything carefully and thoroughly. If Candace is available, we would sincerely welcome her participation in that.
Owens in the past has claimed that Charlie Kirk's murder was part of a broader international assassination plot, including alleged Egyptian agents, and the arrest of the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, was a cover-up. Owens responded to Neff's challenge. Here she was.
They at long last issued a public invitation or a challenge. I'm not sure what it is, but I accept. Okay? Quite literally, all we have ever asked for were sensible answers to our basic questions about what transpired on September 10th.
Whoa.
Yeah, fascinating. I think I reluctantly I agree with Blake Neff's strategy here. I'm someone who's I reject the don't platform arguments. I think it is good to engage in debate idiotic and insane perspectives like those represented by Candace Owens. Candace has accused everyone, usually indirectly, usually using vague language so that she is not directly saying something that is libelous, but she implies through her just asking questions kind of milieu that Turning Point, Israel, Erica Kirk, and others were involved in Charlie Kirk's death, and that the suspect in custody, for which there is overwhelming evidence that Tyler Robinson, is the shooter, including motive to kill Charlie Kirk, that he is not the real killer or that there are other people involved. He is some kind of fall guy. These are sensational claims for which she has presented not a shred of evidence. Yet people, I don't know why people find value in what she says. She's a complete idiot. Good luck to them. They should, come prepared for her usual thing. She'll say, well, isn't it interesting that X? And then she'll pivot and blah, blah, blah. But I hope something useful comes out of it.
I'm not a Candace Owens fan, but the amount that you don't like her makes me want to actually defend her a little bit. I'm like, geez, okay.
No, it should be that because I usually try to find something, I usually try to see some good in all sorts of different perspectives. This is the one person for which I can find not a redeeming thing about them. And so that should tell you something.
Okay, so
because if there was anything there I valued, I would
park
tell
that,
you.
because I'm not spending my day defending Candace Owens. But what I'm excited to see is this conversation. I think that for Turning Points to rest on what the organization says that it stands for would be to invite Candace Owens to the table, right? If she was even an associate of Charlie Kirk and wants clarity on anything, then I think her audience, which is millions of people, also follow along with her. Some maybe to hate watch, but there are at least a large swath of them that really want the answers alongside her. And so to watch her join this conversation with Neff and them to invite her there and for her to accept that shows to me the brilliance of the digital age that we're in. Because in most cases, you would have executives getting involved about what this conversation looks like. It would be too structured. It would almost be like Marjorie Taylor Greene on The View.
Right.
It was nice and neat and whatever. But this is completely live stream and a little bit could get
Or
unhinged.
are they trying to lure her into a trap? Because remember, she has alleged that there's a vast conspiracy to assassinate her involving the French government and Israel, because it always involves Israel. So maybe they're luring her into a trap to assassinate her.
And on the live stream.
Because they're complicit too.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're going to be watching this, and we're going to be talking about it right here on Rising. So I'm excited
most
to.
Definitely. The number of students who are registered as having a disability is skyrocketing at prestigious universities in the U.S. That is according to an article from The Atlantic that's been getting a lot of traction online.
Now, disabled students can receive a variety of special accommodations from their schools. Many of those accommodations are considered standard and are not controversial, but others, such as giving the students extra time to complete exams, have become a point of contention by those who believe they're being exploited. The article reads in part, quote, "Professors now struggle to accommodate the many students with an official disability designation, which may entitle them to extra time, a distraction-free environment, or the use of otherwise prohibited technology. At Brown and Harvard, more than 20% of undergraduates are registered as disabled. 38% of Stanford undergraduates are registered as having a disability." The most common and most, The
most common and most contentious accommodation is the granting of extra time on exams for students with learning disabilities. The extra time may be necessary to complete the test, but unlike a wheelchair ramp, this kind of accommodation can be exploited. And the article goes on to describe some of the more unusual accommodations, such as students with social anxiety getting exemptions from being called on by their professors to answer questions. And one administrator at a public college in California says a student there got permission to bring their mother to class. The internet reacted strongly to the article, with many saying it shows how students are trying to gain an advantage by cheating the system. Journalist Derek Thompson, a friend of mine, writes, "America used to stigmatize disability too severely. Now elite institutions reward it too liberally. It simply does not make any sense to have a policy that declares half of the students at Stanford cognitively disabled and in need of accommodations." This is so insane. Writer Matthew Zaitlin says, "I wonder how much nihilism and low social trust comes from the sense that everyone is getting one over on you and everyone else." And New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof writes, "We liberals have a way of letting good intentions run amok." Yeah. I read this story. It's a spit your coffee out, throw your coffee cup at the wall and shoot yourself story. It's so sad.
I thought about you when this was on the docket for today. I was like, he's like, what frail, what society do we live in?
They're frailing themselves. They want to be perceived as victims so they can get special accommodations. And honestly, you can only blame them for that so much. Because if you have the sense that everyone is getting extra time on their exam because they've feigned some disability, you're the only one who actually has to take the exam under the conditions prescribed, well, you're going to feel it's unfair, and you're going to try to get that advantage too. What if we they're creating a system where eventually 60, 70, 80% of people are getting extra time on the exam, or have mom to hold their hand, or don't get called on?
Wild.
This is so insane. You know what? I'm sorry. On some level, if you have bad anxiety and then you're not going to do bad on the exam should test for that. You should do worse on the exam for that reason. The exam is measuring how good you are at doing the exam. And if we're making it so everybody gets an A+ for what? It's insane. If you're worse at taking exams, you should get a worse score. Sorry, not everyone is equally good at everything. Not everyone is equally brilliant at everything. I would do way worse on a math exam than most people, and probably you. And we could,
you think I'm excellent at math? I'm flattered.
I don't know. We could rig the system so that I get just as good as a grade. If I have access to, if I have extra time and a fancy calculator and I can ask Grok to do it for me, then I'll get the same score. But I should get a worse score because I'm less good at it. That's what the test should be frickin' testing for. This is so insane that they've allowed themselves to get hoodwinked by the language of safetyism and disability and victimhood when you it's exactly as Derek Thompson used to say. We stigmatize disability too much. Now we reward it. Now we put you on a pedestal if you're a victim, and so we encourage people to identify themselves as such because we have given power to victimhood, and that was a profound mistake. End of rant.
I wanted to give you the floor because I knew you would feel a type of way about this. I am frustrated by this because I appreciate that there is a hyper focus on situations and incidents that are often overlooked. I love that the conversation about liberals paying way too much attention to it because, it needed to be looked into about how people with disabilities are faring and having a fair shake at big, prestigious universities. Now, I will agree there is a tendency to overcorrect. Right? If we were all the way over here, we want to end somewhere right in the middle, not over here. And so to have half of these universities or even 20% that are dealing with disabilities is a little bit out there, but I also think we needed to account for some disabilities that do include some mental health disabilities that are not very obvious, like wheelchair disabilities or anything that we think are disabilities because how we've been taught. But there are people who genuinely do.
But those are made up.
Wait, no, there are people that genuinely do need extra time or do have anxiety. I don't know about bringing your mom, but there's some people who actually need extra technology or a quiet space to take a test because they had extreme ADD and things like that. These are real things that actually happen. Maybe not to 40% of the Ivy League population.
You should just fail
but
the test.
But then, so the way that you do in school, like if you fail out of Stanford, that doesn't particularly help you get a job, especially for those. Like a lot of my friends left a college and went into finance, let's say, and worked at some of these investment banks. Now, in our field, people may have looked at what school you went to, but it's really like, are you for me, are you a good writer? Can you produce? Come show me some examples of your work. So for finance and for investment banking, it was like, what's your GPA? These are things that were really happening. So if you're just take a longer time, but you're really good at like a specific task, and you're really good in the banking industry, you just take a long time on a quiz, a silly quiz that really a lot of times in college has nothing to do with your actual real life, then why should you be punished with some like 2.1 GPA and be the last one on the list at the job for JP Morgan because you have a little bit of ADD?
Because doing well on the test, when it's administered fairly, correlates very highly with success in that workplace.
Not always. Some people are great successes. No, some people are great successes that don't like.
You
school
love
wasn't
looking for the exceptions.
No,
there are exceptions to everything.
School could not have been amazing for you. Just like you said, you weren't the best in math. You know what? I think you can calculate your way to a comfortable job like this one. Okay, so you calculated some things correctly to make sure that you were successful in life. So that's what I'm saying. You don't need to be amazing at math to be able to.
I'm not saying being
Yeah, but you didn't.
Misunderstanding. I'm not saying there's no. It doesn't make you a more worthwhile human being. You still have the same moral worth as everyone else. And there are some fields where doing really good at tests or getting really good grades correlates with success in that field and is very important. I would not particularly say that journalism or punditry is one of them. What we're doing, it's important to have good writing skills and good communication skills. Those things are, you can test for good writing skills, right, our math.
But if I needed 10 more minutes than you and my writing was freaking fantastic. And
no, that's unfair. If your writing is better than I should.
And I got 10 more minutes, but I have a disability that requires me that I can't focus in a classroom.
Absolutely
not. And then I write a Pulitzer Prize winning piece, then I should deserve to be a writer.
Well, maybe if I got 10 more minutes, I would write a Pulitzer Prize.
Maybe not, though. You should, but maybe
Well, it should just be the same time limit for both of us.
What if you write an amazing, fascinating piece without the 10 minutes, and I really write my worst work without that extra 10 minutes?
Well, if you write the same piece, but it takes you longer, then I'm better.
Job. I shouldn't be penalized when they look at my essay from college because I didn't have 10 more minutes.
Yes, you should.
No, there's people who actually just really do need that extra time and really need that extra care. That's why there are people in schools and this starts.
I think the difference between
that help out
obvious physical disability where you need
cognitive disabilities,
a ramp because you're in a wheelchair, or you need glasses because you have bad eyesight. I think the difference between that and these very nebulous and poorly defined social disabilities or psychological disabilities
you don't take psychology
so
seriously.
Obvious.
This has been proven to me in the last 2 days. Psychologists will talk about the effects of smartphones on children. You don't take that seriously.
It's pseudoscience.
Psychologists talk
I don't
about
take pseudoscience.
No, psychologists talk about all these things. They talk about how there are actual cognitive disabilities. You don't accept it. Like, why don't you accept people who take empirical data and provide it as information to us and accept it? No, that's ridiculous. You just won't accept the truth. You gotta. One of my good friends told me you need to accept the reality, and that's what you need to do. You need to start to accept the reality.
This story is about people who are accepting your lived reality.
They overcorrected, but that certainly doesn't mean we should go back to the old way when the only thing that was a disability was a wheelchair. That's also not acceptable. I think we need to find some happy medium.
Physical disability should be accommodated.
Yeah,
if you're blind, then you have to have the test read to you, or Braille version of the test. That is so different from saying you get 20
there are no cognitive
minutes.
disabilities at all to you.
I didn't say there are no cognitive.
They shouldn't be acknowledged in college spaces.
I would need more specificity than that to decide whether this should be acknowledged or not. People should not get more time than another student. And let me go a little step further.
Okay.
I'm acknowledging that some people, for whatever cognitive reason, will do less well on a test than another person. What I'm saying is the point of the test is to figure that out. The fact that you're going to do less well on a test than someone else is what it's testing for. Some people are supposed to get an A+, and some people fail it. But now we've designed this stupid system where everyone is supposed to get an A+.
No, my
if it
point
takes
is that
you
it's
2
not
hours
gonna-
to do it to get you an A+, you're going to get 2 hours. Then what's the point of a test? Let's not even have the test. Let's just give everyone an A+ and move on. Let's just enroll everyone in the college and just everyone gets an A+ and everyone gets a diploma. And that's that. The reason they don't want to do that is...
And you're painting this with a broad stroke brush. Giving somebody a couple more minutes or a quiet room to do a test, some people that have cognitive disabilities, will actually help them just compete at a fair playing ground.
Okay, what if my cognitive disability is I'm bad at arithmetic?
No, yours is not real. That's not a real thing.
No, I have a cognitive disability.
I'm talking about people that have maybe a learning disorder.
How dare you? I have a cognitive
No.
disability. I'm bad at
No,
arithmetic. I have a problem. I have a difficulty keeping track of numbers in my head. So I should use pen and paper and get more time. And then I'll get the same score as you.
What we're agreeing on and talking about is people that have access to privilege, whose parents actually probably got them in a situation where they're giving their kid the best shake at being extremely successful. And so they're asking for extra time and extra space when there are real people that actually need a few extra minutes or some quiet space to achieve at least a decent score on tests. No, they're not F students, but these people also might be summed up by their grades when it comes time to graduate college. And so they're just asking that they get a fair chance to actually compete in this testing. Not a fair chance to get an A+, just a fair chance to compete. And they can't
What's fair
focus
is everybody
in a
has the
classroom.
same time limit and everyone has the same accommodations, and then we see a range of scores, and that's how you do it.
I'm certainly happy that you're not in the education field. You want to cut the Department of Ed. You think there's no cognitive disabilities, or you don't want to account for them anyway. You think that means giving everybody an A+. I'm happy that you're in this exact field.
Everything you just said,
And
I
killing it.
co-sign.